Hey, what's up you guys? Welcome back. My name is Jess, but we can get to all that later because what we're here for right here and now is to talk about A24's newest horror comedy, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. You guys, simply put, this movie fucks.
I look like I fuck.
In case you didn't know, Bodies, Bodies, Bodies follows a group of 7 young friends who have a house party at a remote mansion during a hurricane, and they play a party game, it goes wrong, people get murdered, all that jazz, all that stuff that we love wrapped into one movie. And if you haven't picked up on it already, I loved this one. So let's jump right in talking about things that I liked, things that I didn't necessarily like, because there are a few. It's not like bad things, just things that I would have liked to seen a little bit more of, or things that I wish could have been done a little bit better. But of course, the positives totally outweigh the negatives, so let's start with those. First things first, this cast was phenomenal. You can really tell that they are actually a group of friends. Like, they have built that repertoire, that sense of trust and knowledge about each other to the point where they're comfortable really just like going at it. Obviously, a big part of this movie is built around Gen Z, that type of humor, and how that type of humor really is like starting to evolve. So like phrases that you would have said a few years ago maybe are becoming more and more outdated now. And the funny thing is, watching these characters, like they'll say something like, "Oh, you trigger me," and then someone will say like,
"Oh, shut up,"
because that's the reaction that we have to it now. So it's really cool seeing these group of young friends portray exactly what it's like to be a Gen Z, if that makes sense. One of the biggest things that I was a little bit nervous about going in with this one is that sometimes whenever people try and write a script that has the majority of the dialogue be from another generation, so like maybe a group of millennials trying to write Gen Z humor, it doesn't translate very well. But I feel like with this film, the cast took it and made it into something that people our age can easily identify with and not feel like it was cheesy. Granted, there are some cheesy moments, but it's nothing normal people won't pick up on it. So let's start with Pete Davidson. Obviously, him being included in this movie was a point of contention with some people. A lot of people just don't identify with his comedy or just think the dude's obnoxious. And while I can agree with that in some ways, he's fantastic in this movie. He plays the rich douchebag who thinks he walks on water and is basically untouchable. And there is no better casting for this character than Pete Davidson. And while the rest of the core cast do a phenomenal job individually and cohesively as a group, the obvious standout for me was Rachel Senoy. Senoy. I'm so sorry. I doubt you're even watching this, but I apologize. You're phenomenal, by the way, in case you are watching. She steals every single scene that she's in. She's fantastic, and she is 100% going to be a reason why people love this movie so much. Another thing that I absolutely loved is that you have no idea what's gonna happen next. You have no clue who the killer is the entire runtime right up until the end. And like, when I tell you you're not gonna see it coming, you're not gonna see it coming. And that is so hard to pull off these days. And while I have a feeling there are going to be some people who don't like the ending or kind of like the conclusion and how it all ties up, it kind of blew me away because it was so believable in that scenario. It was something that I have never seen before, and I cannot wait to hear y'all's reactions to it because I thought it was genius. So something that we have all seen being said about this movie is that it is a slasher. It's the next Scream. No, it's not. And I mean that with all the love in my heart. This movie is not a slasher. I would very much hesitate to call this movie horror. I know it's being said by a lot of people, but this is very clearly a rated R comedy. It's a whodunit. It's a murder mystery, but do you see people being killed? No. Do you see bodies and blood? Yes, but in a way that's much more after the fact than in your face slasher. And while I'm totally fine with that, and I think that's really cool to see, I think it might hurt the film a little bit in the long run just because I have some friends who don't like horror movies, and that's totally fine. That's, their prerogative. Whenever I first brought the movie up after I had seen it and loved it and wanted to tell my friends about it because I knew that they would like it, the first thing they said was, "Jessica, I don't want to watch a horror movie." That's fine, but would I consider this a horror movie? Not so much. So you know how some people are. They're like, okay, like, I really want to see it. I think it'd be cool, but I don't want to watch people being killed on screen. So I feel like that categorization into the horror genre might not be a great thing, but I certainly will take it as a win for horror in general. Like I said, this is much more of a murder mystery / whodunit, and instead of comparing it to something like Scream, which it honestly just can't touch, Scream is on God tier. It is what it is, but I would more so compare it to Clue from the 90s. It's a dark and stormy night. People can't necessarily leave. Instead of a creepy old mansion, it is a trust fund baby's daddy's mansion, which is a cool upgrade to see, and brings it a little bit back into our times and makes it more realistic, because like a hurricane party where everybody is like getting drunk, that's pretty damn realistic. Who hasn't been to a few of those? All in all, this really boils down to an examination of Gen Z, their humor, their interaction with their friend groups. I say they, like I'm not a part of Gen Z, but seeing the hypocrisy on screen of somebody who is recently sober and somebody doing drugs right in front of them, that's something you see on screen and you're like, dang, like what a bad friend, you know, that sucks. When in real life, that happens all the time. And it really knocks you on your ass because it helps you understand why that behavior in the first place may be toxic. And I think that a lot of people can really learn from this because there's a lot of talk of mental health and drug abuse and how other people try and relate themselves into that conversation while maybe it might seem a little insensitive and insincere. Moving on to like the few little things that I didn't necessarily like. First things first, the ending seemed really abrupt in my opinion. I felt like they could have maybe explored it a little bit more, since the beginning of the movie really just jumps right in. Like, you know, they're in the car, they get to the mansion, it all starts, which I love because I feel like sometimes it takes too long of a time to dive deep into, you know, the character's background and things like that. They did it perfectly. But the ending feels the same way, and I just wanted to see that explored a little bit more. Another thing is that it really plays into those horror movie stereotypes, you know, people going off on their own, crawling around a kitchen with your full phone flashlight on while somebody's in the kitchen looking for you. That just doesn't really compute. But at the same time, I really just needed to suspend my belief and stop thinking about it so much, because if you go into this movie and sit down and say, I'm gonna examine every single bit of this because it's an A24 movie and those usually require a deeper examination, you're wrong, okay? Take this for what it is. There's no deep meaning. This is just a fun as shit whodunit that you should watch in the theaters because you need that theater experience with your friends. Everything together, the acting, the setting, the music, Stream Hot Girl by Charlie XCX was perfect, and I could not recommend this more. I give this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I really think a lot of people are gonna love this one, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, follow me on Instagram at discofinalgirl, and if you liked this video, please subscribe or just give it a thumbs up. It would really make my day. I'll see you guys next time. Stay creepy.